Once resilient in the face of innumerable scandals, Rasheeda and Kirk Frost are now at the center of an unanticipated storm. Rumors of their marriage disintegrating have escalated into a full-fledged drama explosion, leaving fans in utter disbelief. This time, though, it's personal and not simply another reality TV gimmick. And source revealed startling information about a covered affair that Kirk had been frantically attempting to conceal late yesterday night. When did Rasheeda learn of it? To put it mildly, their marriage was in ruins, charges were made, and emotions were running hot. The betrayal was deeply hurtful, and according to sources, Rasheeda is finally revealing Kirk's true nature and is done being the devoted wife. However, this is where things drastically change. Rasheeda is coming for everything, not just leaving. The truth is coming to light more quickly than anyone anticipated, from cryptic social media statements to behind-the-scenes arguments captured on tape. Fans are left wondering whether this is truly the end for Rasheeda and Kirk, since there have been rumors of divorce papers already being filed. You won't be able to express what you're about to hear, so pay attention. With her hands shaking, Rasheeda sat silently and stared at her phone, scrolling through the text that had just been sent to her. As the situation's truth struck her like a ton of bricks, the words on the screen became hazy. Kirk had done it once more. This time, though, it went beyond mere rumors. This time, there was evidence, unquestionable, heartbreaking evidence that he had betrayed her in the most heinous manner. The messages were more than just suggestive emoticons or flirtatious texts. No, this was a serious affair that had been going on for months behind her back. There was no space for dispute because everything was there: voice notes, pictures, and private meetings. What's the worst? He hadn't been skulking around with just any old groupie. Rasheeda knew who she was. Someone she had trusted. Her mind was rushing over every conversation, every time that suddenly made sense, and her pulse was thumping in her chest as she gripped the phone more tightly. How had she been so blind? The late-night calls, the mysterious absences, the contemptuous demeanor whenever she asked him questions. How could she have allowed him to deceive her again? She was struck with a wave of nausea and thought she might be ill. This was no ordinary scandal. Kirk wasn't just being Kirk here. This was a completely new kind of betrayal. And, for the first time in years, Rasheeda wasn't sure whether she could bounce back from this. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough over this man. She was plenty forgiving. She was finished now. Her hands trembled as she hit the call button. Before the recognizable voice picked up, the phone rang twice. "Hey Rasheeda, how are you?" Although she spoke in a calm tone, there was a noticeable edge to it. "We must speak, right now." Her blood began to boil as she heard a pause on the other end. "Can we? I'm a little busy right now." "No, Kirk," she interrupted, her tone piercing and unyielding. "This cannot wait." One more pause, then a sigh. "All right, in 20, I will return home." With her hands balled into fists, she hung up without saying anything else. 20 minutes. That was the only time she had to be ready for the impending battle. With all of her anger and pain building inside of her mind was racing with things she wanted to say. There would be no sugarcoating or ignoring the situation this time. Kirk was going to have to deal with the ramifications and the truth. She paced the living room as the minutes passed, repeating all of the lies and justifications he had given her over the years. It was all coming to a head now. At last, the front door opened and Kirk entered without a readable expression. He realized he was in trouble after glancing at Rasheeda. "What's happening?" With a reserved tone, he inquired. Rasheeda wasted no time. Her eyes met his as she raised the phone. "You tell me." Kirk's expression hardly changed, but she could see a glimmer of sorrow, fear, or guilt in his eyes. But it didn't matter anymore. "Kirk, who is she?" Rasheeda spoke steadily, but there was no denying the underlying rage. Kirk let out a deep breath and wiped his face. "Rasheeda, I'm not sure what you think you—" "Don't," she yelled, raising her voice. "Don't tell me lies. Not now. I have all of the photographs, all of the notes. Therefore, don't just stand there and disparage my intelligence." A dense and oppressive silence descended upon the room. Kirk's jaw tightened as he averted his gaze. He said, "It's not what you think." Rasheeda laughed bitterly. "Oh, really?" "Because I believe my husband has been having an affair with someone I trust and know. I believe you have been deceiving me for several months." So Kirk, please tell me, what precisely am I misinterpreting? Kirk parted his lips, then shut them again. He was speechless for the first time. Rasheeda only needed to hear that. A chilly insight descended upon her. It was this. She had been avoiding this moment for a long time. When she spoke again, her tone was uncannily serene. We're finished, Kirk. His eyes widened in shock as his head jerked up. Come on, Rasheeda. Avoid doing this. She shook her head though. No, this is what you did. When you concluded that our marriage wasn't worthy of respect, you made this decision. You will now have to deal with the repercussions. She turned aside and headed towards the stairs, her hands trembling, but her determination unwavering. However, Kirk's voice interrupted her as she was about to take the first step. He whispered softly, "There's something you don't know." She stopped. Her heart was racing. She turned back around slowly. What? Kirk paused, a puzzled look on his face. Then he said something that made all the difference. As Kirk's comments lingered in the air, Rasheeda stood motionless at the bottom of the stairway, her heart racing. You are unaware of something. Her throat tightened each breath. Now what was he supposed to say? What justification was there for his actions? Her eyes narrowed as she slowly turned around. Kirk, what are you talking about? His entire body was stiff as he exhaled deeply and rubbed a palm over his face. It's complicated, he whispered. Rasheeda laughed bitterly. Difficult? Kirk, you cheated on me. You repeatedly lied in front of me. What is complex about that, exactly? Kirk's jaw tightened as he shifted uneasily. Look, I never intended for you to learn this way. I was attempting to manage the situation before it became unmanageable. Rasheeda was agitated by that. Take care of things. She said it again, raising her voice. Take care of things? Do you hear yourself, Kirk? Nothing was being handled by you. While I was at home believing that we were still working on our marriage, you were out here leading a double life. She could sense the rage brewing and the heat rising in her cheeks. She had tolerated Kirk's bullshit for years, believing his excuses and giving him the benefit of the doubt. However, this was too much for her to handle. Kirk looked away and inhaled deeply. Please, Rasheeda, take a moment to listen to me. She shook her head though. No, I've had enough of you. I only want the truth to be heard from you. There was strain in the silence that hung between them. Finally, Kirk said something. It was more than a simple affair. He spoke in a quiet, almost tentative tone. There was more to it than that. Rasheeda felt a knot in her stomach. More than that. Kirk, what the devil does that even mean? He ran a hand through his beard and hesitated. The mother is expecting a child. The words were like a kick to Rasheeda's stomach. As though someone had literally taken the wind out of her, she felt the air depart her lungs. Expecting a child. She struggled to comprehend what she had just heard as she gazed at Kirk, her mind racing. No, she shook her head and muttered. No, you're telling lies. Kirk gave her a serious look as he met her eyes. I wish I was. Rasheeda staggered backward, clutching the railing for balance. She felt sick to her stomach. This was not taking place. This cannot be taking place. She had put up a lot of effort to get them married. She had been so forgiving of him. However, this was blatantly treacherous. Her eyes were watering, but she fought the need to cry. Not before him. Not right now. You've known for how long? She hardly raised her voice above a whisper. Kirk looked down and sighed. A couple of weeks. Rasheeda laughed sharply and bitterly. A couple weeks. So you've been hiding this from me while I've been acting like a complete idiot, believing that we were still attempting to resolve our differences. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. She could tell everything from the silence. Rasheeda's hands clenched into fists at her sides as she shook her head. Who is she? Her mind began to race with concerns as Kirk hesitated once again. Who is she? Her voice was as cutting as a dagger as she repeated. Kirk inhaled deeply. It's a familiar face. Rasheeda's heart fell. She shook her head, whispering, no, you wouldn't. But she could tell by the expression on Kirk's face that he would. Kirk, who is she? Rasheeda demanded, her angry voice quivering. After much hesitation, Kirk finally uttered the name that chilled Rasheeda's blood. Jasmine, the room whirled. To avoid losing her equilibrium, Rasheeda had to tighten her hold on the railing. Jasmine, the woman with whom Kirk had a complete child and whom he had flirted with years before. Rasheeda had forgiven him for the woman. She had accepted Jasmine's boy into their family and set aside her personal suffering to ensure the youngster never experienced abandonment. She had made every effort to put the incident behind her. Kirk had returned to her now. White hot and unrestrained, Rasheeda could feel the anger brewing inside of her. Her whole body shook as she stepped forward slowly. "Are you saying that you returned to Jasmine? After all, after you've caused me so much suffering?" Kirk dared to appear embarrassed, but Rasheeda didn't buy it. "I didn't intend for it to occur," he whispered. That was it. That was the last straw. Rasheeda sprang at him, pushing him so hard that he almost fell backward. "You didn't intend for that to occur. You didn't intend for it to occur." She let out a scream. "Kirk, you made a decision. A decision to deceive me once more. A decision to once more disregard our marriage. What comes next? She's pregnant now. Well, what am I going to do with that?" Simply put on a smile and act as though nothing is wrong. Kirk exhaled sharply and massaged his face. "You don't have to understand. You get it?" Rasheeda laughed without humor. "Oh, I completely understand. I know you're a coward, a liar, and a cheater. I am aware that you will always manage to sabotage everything, regardless of how many opportunities I offer you. And I realize this. This very spot. The end is here." Kirk's expression contorted. "Please, Rasheeda," but she was already trembling. "No, Kirk, I'm done. This time, for real." She pivoted on her heel and charged at the door. Kirk went after her. "Where are you heading?" Rasheeda didn't even turn around. "To express your true self to the world." She then reached for her phone and pressed the record button. Rasheeda was not relieved as she had hoped when the door slammed and the sound reverberated throughout the home. Rather, a spooky silence descended, weighing down on her like an unbreakable burden. Her heart continued to race after the encounter, and she felt numb all over. At last, she had completed the task. Kirk had been advised to go by her. However, why did she feel as though she had been broken into pieces? She staggered over to the couch, buried her face in her hands, and fell onto it. The humiliation, the lies, and the betrayal were all beginning to seep in. She had fought for this marriage for years, supporting Kirk through all of his misdeeds and showing him forgiveness when no one else would. For what purpose? To be treated disrespectfully once more. To learn that he had still decided to betray her in spite of everything. Her eyes were burning with tears, but she would not let them go. Over Kirk Frost, she had already shed too many tears. Attempting to fix something that was never going to last had already cost her too much energy. Her thoughts were interrupted as her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She picked it up after hesitating. A message from an unidentified number appeared on the screen. "I believe we should speak. It concerns Kirk." Rasheeda's throat tightened each breath. Who was this? Was it the woman with whom he had been having an affair? Was it a random individual attempting to incite further drama? She typed a response, her fingers shaking. "Who is this?" Another message appeared in a matter of seconds. "Come see me in 1 hour at Cafe Royale. I believe you have a right to the complete truth." Rasheeda was hesitant. Her gut warned her to stay out of any additional trouble. She was done listening. She needed no more suffering. The letter, however, seemed urgent, almost like a warning. She also needed to know if there was more to this story, if Kirk had not told her anything. She inhaled deeply, picked up her keys, and left the room. The aroma of coffee and vanilla permeated the dimly lit cafe. Rasheeda looked around the room, trying to find the sender of the text. Her eyes fell on a woman seated in the back corner, stirring her drink anxiously, and her heart began to race. Wearing a form-fitting dress and big sunglasses, she appeared youthful, perhaps in her mid-20s, as though she was trying to conceal her face. Rasheeda stepped forward warily. "Did you send me the text?" The woman's countenance was unreadable as she looked up. She took off her sunglasses slowly, exposing droopy, exhausted eyes. "Yes," she murmured quietly. "My name is Jasmine." Rasheeda felt as though she had been struck in the stomach. Jasmine. Her blood pressure shot up at the mere mention of the name. Kirk had cheated on Jasmine years prior. She was the one with whom he had a complete child and who was responsible for one of the most significant scandals of their marriage. Now why had she come here? Rasheeda's arms were crossed. "You're texting me, but why? Have you not gone far enough?" Jasmine let out a breath and appeared truly sorry. I understand that you don't want to hear from me at all. I don't blame you either. It's not about me, though. It concerns Kirk. It also has to do with the other woman. Rasheeda's eyes narrowed. What are you discussing? Jasmine leaned forward after taking a wary look around. Kirk has been lying to you both about the woman he got pregnant with. Rasheeda's jaw tightened. He has, of course. He lies. Not exactly breaking news, is it? Jasmine gave a head shake. No, you're not getting it. She isn't just any old girl. You've known her for many years. Rasheeda felt sick to her stomach. She felt a chilling rush of sickness. What are you saying? Jasmine inhaled deeply before continuing. It's Kiana. Rasheeda's body tensed up. She felt a rush of surprise at the name. Her helper was Kiana. She had worked with the woman for years, confided in her, and trusted her. During some of the most trying times in her marriage, she had been by her side, in her house, and with her family. And now she was being told by Jasmine that Kirk had been having an affair with Kiana. That his child was in her, his child. Rasheeda shook her head and murmured, no. That isn't feasible. Jasmine took out her phone from within her bag. Until I saw these, I didn't believe it either. Over the table, she slid the phone. Rasheeda's hands were shaking as she picked it up after hesitating. However, she felt as though the earth had been torn out from under her as soon as she laid eyes on the screen. Photos of Kirk and Kiana together, cuddling, kissing, and slinking into hotels, were there in crisp high definition. They were heard whispering about keeping the pregnancy a secret in voice recordings, text messages, and even films. Rasheeda breathed in quick spurts. She nearly dropped the phone because her hands were shaking so much. Her voice was hardly audible above a whisper as she continued, "This can't be real." Jasmine let out a sigh. "I hope it's not. However, it is, and before he tries to turn this into another of his lies, I felt you should know." Rasheeda saw that everything in her universe was crumbling. Kirk betraying you was one thing, but to have Kiana betray you? Someone she had trusted. Someone who had slept with her spouse and grinned in her face. It was excessive. Anger took over and her vision became blurry. She got to her feet without thinking, almost toppling the table. Rasheeda hardly felt the rapid movement, but Jasmine flinched. Anger was pulsing through her entire body. She whispered, her voice trembling, "I must leave." Jasmine grabbed her by the arm. "Wait, Rasheeda." Rasheeda, however, was already in motion. Her fury boiling, she stormed out of the cafe. She had no intention of crying. She was not going to lose it. She was going to put a stop to this for good. The drive home was hardly recalled by Rasheeda. Her mind was racing with what she had just learned, and her hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles became white. It was worse than the last time Kirk had missiled her. She wasn't just any woman. She couldn't ignore a stranger. It was Kiana, her helper, whom she had allowed into her house because she trusted her. The ultimate act of treachery. She could hear her heart thumping in her ears by the time she turned into the driveway. She slammed the door behind her as she ran into the house. Kirk wasn't there, but the boom reverberated around the deserted room. She strode directly to the bedroom and pulled open drawers, looking for any indication that he had already departed. However, his clothing remained intact. The door still had his shoes neatly lined up. He continued to live in her house as if nothing had occurred. In her pocket, her phone buzzed. Her hands were shaking as she took it out. "Kirk texted me about it. We must speak." Rasheeda laughed resentfully. Speak? Now he wanted to talk. After all, the front door creaked open before she could even consider answering. The sound of heavy footsteps filled the corridor. As Kirk entered with an inscrutable expression, she turned. "Rasheeda," he began in a composed tone. "Too quiet." He was stopped in his tracks when she raised a hand. "Don't." Her voice was piercing, like a dagger slicing through the tension. "You have no right to pretend that you were unaware of this." Kirk rubbed the back of his neck and breathed. "I won't tell you lies." Rasheeda's eyes were blazing with rage. It would be the first time. He stepped forward slowly, ignoring the jab. "I made a mistake. Errors." Rasheeda's tone faltered. "Kirk, you had an affair with her. Kiana, my helper. She became pregnant because of you. You created a whole new life behind my back, not simply a mistake. Kirk's expression tensed. I never intended to cause you harm. Rasheeda laughed resentfully. Oh, so you fell into her bed by accident? Kirk ran a hand across his face and moaned. That wasn't the case. What was it like then? She yelled. Kirk, tell me, make sense of it. Since he has repeatedly lied to me. Demonstrating that he was never worth the struggle in the first place, all I see now is the same man. He didn't respond. Any justification he could have made would have been overshadowed by his silence. Rasheeda learned all she needed to know from that quiet. She took a step back and shook her head. I'm finished. Kirk's head jerked upward. Rasheeda, I'm done, I answered. Although her tone faltered, her determination remained unwavering. I have supported you for years. When no one else would, I stood up for you. No woman should ever have to forgive things that I have forgiven. However, she shook her head and swallowed hard. I draw the line at this point. Kirk's mouth clenched. That's it, then. Rasheeda's chin went up. That's all. Something flashed in Kirk's eyes for the first time. Feeling sorry, fury, fear. It made no difference what it was. Not to her. Not after all that he had done to her. Between them, there was a strained quiet that was heavy with all the words that would never be spoken. Rasheeda then pivoted on her heel and left the room without giving it another look. He didn't have to explain himself to her. She didn't require a further apology. He was no longer necessary to her. She entered the hallway and saw Kiana standing there with her hands clutched in front of her tummy, perhaps to hide the proof of her betrayal, and her face pale. Rasheeda felt her blood boil. You! Kiana winced but refused to back down. Rasheeda, avoid it. Rasheeda spoke in an icy tone. Don't even attempt to defend yourself. Kiana's eyes began to well up with tears. I never intended for this to occur. Rasheeda laughed without humor. You didn't intend to have sex with my spouse, did you? You didn't intend to tell me lies every day? Did you not intend to destroy my family? Kiana's lip quivered. Rasheeda interrupted her, her voice shaking with anger, saying, you don't deserve to speak my name. You have no right to be in this house. And before I make you regret ever entering my life, you will depart if you still possess any dignity. Kiana parted her lips, but nothing came out. Rather, she turned, nodded, and left out the front door. Rasheeda's heart was racing as she stood there for a while, staring at the door. The last bit of pain that had been holding her down was then released as she exhaled softly. She had freedom. There was no turning back this time. The future of Rasheeda and Kirk Frost's marriage is obviously in jeopardy as their drama develops. Fans are left wondering, will Rasheeda and Kirk's marriage truly dissolve as a result of betrayals, secrets, and heightened emotions? Or is there any chance of reconciliation? Let us know what you think. How do you feel about Rasheeda's choice to face Kirk after his bombshell affair? Is this the last straw, or do you think their love can withstand another scandal? Remember to leave a comment below with your opinions. To ensure you never miss an update on the newest celebrity drama, remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell. This story is far from over, so stay tuned for more exciting news.